I want to ask you, can you just give us a basic update of what's going on?
Right. So, long story short, um, I've been on this since last year. You obviously you know that I published a story, I did a documentary, and um, in the process of trying to get information from the DEA, the FBI, CIA, the IRS, the State Department, and U.S. attorneys, I kept running into a brick wall because they kept saying he's a private individual, privacy concerns, blah 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 blah. So it wasn't until after he was actually declared winner of the election that I could then actually, you know, send a proper freedom of information request, which they would have to action. So which we did in March, and so I did that in collaboration with Aaron Greenspan of PlayInsight.org. Now, after sending that FOIA, the expectation was that since this person is now a president-elect, they would obviously have to honor the FOIA. Instead, they got back to us saying they're not going to honor the FOIA, because of this thing called privacy concerns. And it made no sense to us. How can you invoke privacy concerns for someone who is a public figure? It's not a private individual. So we decided to test this in court. So in collaboration with Aaron, so Aaron actually filed the lawsuits, but I basically paid all the filing fees and whatnot. So we basically filed this lawsuit jointly. So we sued 6 US government agencies. We sued the FBI, we sued the CIA, the IRS, the DEA, the State Department, and US attorneys. Initially, when they got back to with their initial response in courts, I think this was in July, they had mentioned something about 2026 being the potential date for resolution. So I didn't really think much was going to come of it so soon. And then on Friday, I was in the shower. Roughly around this time on Friday last week, I was in the shower and I came out of the shower and I saw a message from Aaron on my phone, and he was like, "I have very good news." And I thought, what on earth could it be? Then he sent me a document, and I opened it, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing because essentially all 6 agencies which we had sued all said one by one they are going to honor the FOIA. I didn't see it coming. It came out of nowhere. I'd love to take the credit for it, but the truth is, we don't really know why. It really came out of nowhere, and they just sort of dropped it on us. Hey, we're going to honor this FOIA after all. After initially opposing it and talking about 2026 potentially being the date for it in court. So the official filing date was September 11th, which was yesterday, Monday. So I had to wait till Monday before obviously, breaking the news, So I contacted Samuel of People's Gazette. I showed him all that. So that's pretty much where we are now. So there's potentially, so the FBI in the response stated that they've identified 2,500 pages of relevant documents relating to Bola Tinubu. Bear in mind that both Pablo Escobar and Malcolm X, who were 2 people of extreme interest to the FBI, had roughly that amount of document pages in their FBI files, right? So again, it begs the question: what exactly do these agencies have on this guy? Who exactly is this guy? And bear in mind, that's just the FBI alone. The State Department, the CIA, the DEA, IRS, they also have their own dossiers, and they've also said that they're going to honor the FOIAs and release these documents at the rate of between 300 and 500 pages a month. So, and this apparently starts from October, which is next month. So, I'm kind of like you, kind of like anyone else at this point. I'm just looking forward to see what's going to be in those documents. I've been wanting to see what is in these files for years. I've been trying to get access to these files since last year. But finally, it looks as if, the quest may be at an end. What we don't know is to what extent they're going to redact a lot of these files, because I know, especially when it comes to like the CIA and the DEA, where there's intelligence operations potentially involved, a lot of it is going to be redacted. But nonetheless, this represents a lot of progress. And dare I say, no Nigerian journalist, living or dead, has ever come this close to actually unraveling who exactly this guy is and what the deal is between him and the US government. So I think it's a certain amount of professional pride in that. But over and above that, I think Nigeria, being that this is a country of 200 million people or so, I think Nigerians deserve to know who their supposed president is and what interest he represents. So, again, I'm not exactly sure why the decision was made. It was completely unexpected, but we don't look a gift horse in the mouth. I'm very happy with the decision. So, roll on October.
Wow. That's a lot to take in what you're saying. I just want to say a couple things and see what you have to say. First, David, I get a sense from looking at tweets that not only is there misinformation, there's misunderstanding from obedience from Nigerians and Americans. And I just wanted to tell people, and you correct me if I'm wrong, David, that there are documents, like he said, that the U.S. government agencies, like the FBI, the DEA, the IRS, the CIA, have on Bola Tinubu. And there is a law in the United States called the Freedom of Information Act that says unless there's a good reason not to, citizens have the right to see the documents from these agencies.
Exactly.
And you are telling me that you worked with Mr. Greenspan, the attorney, and you actually paid his fees?
So he's not an attorney. He's
okay.
He's not a lawyer. He runs a website called plainsight.org, which is it's a civil society organization which essentially deals with exposure of information which is in the public interest. So basically, what Plainsight does is information which is supposed to be on public record but isn't publicly accessible for some cockamamie reason or another. Plainsight makes it publicly accessible for free, right? So they work with lawyers, they work with attorneys. So so he sends out FOIAs almost like on a daily basis, and if FOIAs are not honored, then he uses strategic litigation to get these records. So in this case, we actually worked with a lawyer who was working pro bono. So what I was actually paying for was filing fees and things like that, because you have to, anytime you're doing a filing, you have to pay a fee.
Right.
So it runs into several hundreds of dollars each time. So that's what I've been doing. But in terms of the actual legal legwork, there's a lawyer who is working pro bono with Plainsight in DC, who has actually been the one sort of at the grinding face of it.
Okay. Again, there's a lot of misinformation, and I read the same things over and over again. I'm sure you do. Why the delay? Why not release them now? And do you have an answer to that? Because they're waiting till October. You hear me?
So, first of all, as I said, this was completely unexpected. We had previously been told something about 2026. So having it happen in 2023, much less next month, was completely out of the blue. I did not see it coming, neither did Aaron.
Right.
So, and what makes it even more curious is that this wasn't like the FBI or the DEA or the IRS individually deciding to honor the FOIA. This was all six, which suggests that this was actually coordinated by the Department of Justice. So potentially what that means is there are bigger forces at play than even we might be aware of. There might be all sorts of reasons why this could be happening. This could be a political issue in the US. It could be that maybe someone in a position of power has seen it as something which potentially could be very embarrassing to Joe Biden. It could be all sorts of reasons. I have no idea. I'm just speculating. I'm just spitballing here. So honestly, I have no idea why they chose to come out with it at this time. I also don't know why they've chosen the release schedule that they've chosen, where they said the FBI said 500 pages a month. Then I think IRS or was it the DEA said 300 pages a month. I'm not sure why they've made these decisions, and I'm not really. I can't pretend to know what the rationale behind it is. What I do know is that, as unexpected as it is, it's also very welcome. So I'm not looking to give horse in the mouth. I'm not complaining. Um, what I just really want to know at the end of all of this is the information going to be actionable, or are they going to sort of redact everything useful in it? Because that's something I think U.S. government agencies are notorious for doing. They
Right.
redact a lot of sensitive information. So if they can put out information which has been very strongly hinted at and suggested for years in informal settings, but being able to see it in black and white, I think would be
Yeah.
huge. Even if it doesn't actually do anything in terms of the Nigerian Supreme Court hearing, even if it doesn't do anything, what it would do is that once and for all, it would establish that this person is in actual fact everything that we said he is, and um, he would never have any legitimacy whatsoever, regardless of whether or not he was head of state. So something similar happened. I think it was in Honduras. I think it was the president there. I think his name was something Hernandez. Was it Abel Hernandez? I forget what the name was. Hernandez, and he was a sitting president. He was a sitting head of state, and he was indicted for drug trafficking, and he was extradited, and he's serving jail time in the States now. So I'm not suggesting that the same thing will happen here, but I'm just saying, it will forever remove that myth of invincibility around this guy and make it clear that even people like him can be brought to some form of justice, or at least public exposure, which I think is very important.
That is such an interesting point you make. At very least, public exposure. You'll still have the people who deny it. Um, I thought, just making an educated guess, that they're waiting till October because they need labor. They need staff to review these documents, go through them, redact them, and then post them. So that takes some time. You think there's any merit to that?
I mean, yeah, but it still doesn't explain why they chose to put the documents out in the first place.
Oh
Because
no,
they
it
could
does
easily,
not. No, it does
you know,
not. But doesn't that seem like a possible explanation? I'm surprised. You know what I'm saying? I'm surprised it's that
yeah,
quick.
well, yeah, yeah. I mean, but the thing is, knowing if that were the case, that would also suggest that a decision has been made from higher up to put
Yeah.
these documents out. Because why would these institutions notify the court that they're putting these documents out before they had staff in place to actually redact these things? So if that was the case, then it would support the theory that I have that this is being coordinated by the DOJ. And if it's being coordinated by the DOJ, that raises even more questions: that what potentially are we dealing with here?
That is a great question, and it's not always a good idea to speculate, but it is an amazing question. If it were the DOJ, every DOJ is different, based on every administration, every who's the president of the U.S. And the one we have is more independent than any we've had in maybe my lifetime. That's just my opinion.
Right.
And uh, they have a special counsel for investigating Trump, but they also are investigating Hunter Biden.
Right.
So that's balanced, okay, for this day and age. So I don't know if it's just false hope, but maybe they have made this decision independently because these requests have been made by you and Mr. Greenspan, and they're valid requests.
I would certainly hope so. I would hope so, because I mean, if that's the case, then I'd be able to take the credit for it. However, knowing how the world works, I know it's usually a lot more complicated than that. So, which is why I'm being careful not to sort of, do a victory dance too soon until I actually see what is in those documents, but,
Of course. Yeah, me neither. I'm trying to stay calm about it. You said like me. You said I'm like you. You said that to me earlier. Do you remember the context that was in?
No, I can't say that I do.
No, okay. Now we already have some documents, don't we? We have the I guess it's the forfeiture of $460,000, thanks to your work. What is your thinking about the fact that there are documents with the DEA, the CIA, and even the State Department?
Well, so what I'm most concerned about sorry, in addition to the documents held by the FBI, are the documents held by the DEA. That's actually what I'm most looking forward to.
Right. Sure.
The DEA is sort of like the grinding face of the so-called war on drugs, right? So if there ever were an agency that could give you a straight answer, that to what extent, I mean, we know he was involved in heroin trafficking, we know he was a drug trafficker, but to what extent was he involved with this thing? And what does the US government know that is not in the public domain about his involvement in drug trafficking? I think the DEA is the agency that's going to give a direct answer. So I'm most interested in seeing what they had to say. And it was kind of instructive looking through their response that, even though they also said they're going to comply with the FOIA, they basically just didn't, unlike the FBI, they didn't give any indication as to exactly what they have. They said nothing. They just said we'll neither confirm nor deny, and we think it's premature at this time to give a briefing schedule. So I'm actually really looking forward to seeing what exactly is going to come out of the DEA, because that's, in my opinion, the DEA and the FBI files is where the real meat of the matter will be. The IRS might have something, the State Department might have something, but the DEA specifically, as well as the FBI. Of course,
that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So what else, if any, questions do you think do you have regarding this issue? Have we touched most of the bases?
Well, I guess the final thing, which it's very unlikely we're going to get an answer for, but the final thing that I really want to know, which I probably will never be able to know, probably none of us will ever know, is to what extent was this person involved with, with American foreign intelligence, with the CIA?
Oh,
because it's,
wow.
The CIA, obviously, it's very unlikely the CIA is going to divulge any information. I should mention, this hasn't been mentioned publicly, but even in the process of actually serving these papers on these agencies, right? These 6 agencies, the CIA was the only agency it was almost impossible to serve them papers, because you'd serve them, they'd reject the service. Very peculiar institution like this. Problems that didn't exist with any of the other 5. It was the CIA. So I think they were served, I think, 3 separate times before service was actually accepted. So already the posturing that was clear from that already was they clearly didn't really want to be part of this. So which would suggest to me that they know something. However, knowing the CIA, whatever it is they know, we probably will never know until maybe the year 3031, because it's going to be classified till whenever.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Heavily redacted. But, that's what I would really like to know, to what extent, because I've heard colloquially, I've heard from several, take it or leave it sources, that not only was he like a source of intel, like from the point of view of being a Nigerian political operator, but that even before that, that he had actually turned state witness. He was essentially a snitch.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I would really love to know to what extent, intelligence, both domestic and foreign intelligence in the US has been playing with this guy. I'd really love to know. And the reason it's so important to know is we'll then know for a fact that are we in a situation where pretty much the way it was in the 70s and the 80s, where we're having sort of, you know, the U.S. government sort of meddling in Latin America and Middle East and Africa.
Well,
Is that what is still happening here?
Oh, this is boggling my mind. That if he were an informant, was this after his settlement? Was it part of his settlement? And does that make the U.S. complicit?
Exactly.
Okay.
These are the questions. These are the questions, because which is why I said I was very surprised
Wow.
to see these documents being released. I'm very surprised because from all indications, it didn't seem as if the US government was going to come out of this smelling of roses and lavender. So what exactly is happening behind the scenes to even make them even want to release this? Again, I would actually love to find out someday. I probably will never find out. I probably will never know, because these are the stories, the sort of behind the scenes political and bureaucratic struggles, which never really make the mainstream. Nobody ever hears about it. But I'd love to know personally, because there's
I
just
think
a
we
lot
all.
going on.
Well, I think many of us want to know. I know you want to know it personally. And it's just astonishing to me that you've taken us on this journey and now we're at this point. Is there anything you want to clear up for people that you see in terms of maybe common misconceptions that people tweet? Is there any kind of debunking you want to do?
Yeah, so I guess the main thing I'd like to point out is most people who have seen the story, they saw a headline saying FBI announces plan to blah 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 blah. And they have this idea that means the FBI put out a press release out of nowhere stating that they're going to release documents on the president. No, that's not what happened. There was an FOIA which I filed jointly with Aaron Greenspan. FOIA was not honored. When that didn't happen, when that wasn't honored, then we filed a lawsuit against these 6 agencies. So the case was actually in courts, basically asking them to explain why they didn't honor the FOIAs. Yeah. And in response to this case, initially, while they had said this is going to drag on to 2026, blah, 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 they came out of nowhere on Friday and basically, we're going to give you the information that you're asking for. So,
you're saying you want just to make clear that this has come out of the blue.
Well, I mean, so from my perspective, it's come out of the blue in the sense that I wasn't expecting it, but it hasn't come out of the blue in terms of a procedural thing. There was an existing context. Because people have this mistaken idea that if this is all, people see 2 and 2 and then they add them together and get 22. So people say, oh, right, Joe Biden met with this guy at the G20. Something must have happened between them. And then all of a sudden the FBI is, no, that's not how the US.
No, I mean, that was so recent. That just happened the other day. It couldn't, I really don't think it could possibly.
No, that's not how it happened. There was an existing lawsuit which was filed jointly by Aaron and myself. That's the existing context.
Oh, sure. So you want to make that clear to people.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I'm glad. I didn't even suspect such a thing. Is there anything else maybe? Just generally about the process?
Well, I guess it's also that I guess people should be aware that there's a lot of sort of bureaucratic, when 2,500 pages have been identified by an agency on someone, it doesn't mean that that person's name is going to be mentioned on all 2,500 pages. It just means that information that might be relevant to that person
Oh yeah,
has been identified on those 2,500 pages. That's what it means. So
absolutely.
if 500 pages are being released every month about, from this FYA, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a James Hadley Chase novel
That
about,
there's a what? That there's a what?
there's a James Hadley Chase novel coming out of the FBI
Okay.
every month. That's not what it means, right? There might be, but more likely than not, there won't be. And a lot of the information will be sort of information that is relevant to the cases surrounding him and might not necessarily be about him as a person. So I think people should just be patient, because I think what tends to happen is people's attention span tends to wane after one or two releases, and maybe they don't see something that looks um, salacious or entertaining or gossip worthy, and then they're like, oh yeah, there's nothing here, this is nothing burger. We don't know that yet. So I think people should pretty much just hold their horses, keep their powder dry until we see what it is.
Right. It's hard to do, to have no expectations,
Yeah.
because we want to see a smoking gun,
Yeah.
and it's unlikely we will. Right.
Or at least we don't know.
Unless you put the
We don't know
pieces
if and
together.
when we will.
Huh?
Yeah. Or at least we don't know if and when we will.
And there may be many little crumbs, and
Exactly.
I'm sure you're going to try to put put those pieces together.
Yeah.
Okay, but you never really get the full picture. It's what about the common? I see many tweets that, oh, I don't trust the FBI. I don't trust the U.S. Now, by the way, I don't trust them either, but I trust that the real documents will be released, albeit redacted.
So I guess what a lot of people don't understand is that the way the US judicial system works is extremely different to the way the Nigerian judicial system works. So if you make a sworn statement before a judge in the US, you submit a document in court in the US, and you state that you are going to do XYZ, you are going to do XYZ. Because if you don't, that is a whole that is a that is a criminal offense on its own, and it's taken very seriously. I feel like in our context, a lot of us don't necessarily tend to understand that. So there is this mistaken belief that the FBI can decide to go back on its words or something. No, it can't. Once this has been filed in court that you are going to do this, you are going to do it, right? So which is why, like, so when I got this information on Friday, because this wasn't filed officially until Monday, I didn't say anything about it until Monday.
Wow, that must have been hard.
Oh yeah, it was. It was. But when it was officially filed on Monday, I went to town with it, because now, for a fact, those documents are going to emerge, because it has been stated in court that we are going to do X, Y, Z. So
Absolutely. And I'm sure you do. You know of the history of. You can go on the FBI.gov right now
yeah.
and do searches. There, Frank Sinatra has a file. John Lennon has a file. Martin Luther King Jr. has a file. In fact, I think they tried to get him to commit suicide. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, yeah. I've
I
heard of
think
that.
it was what's his name? The head guy, gruesome guy, Hubbard.
J. Edgar Hoover.
Huh?
J. Edgar Hoover.
J. Edgar Hoover, absolutely. And so this is not unusual to me that there is a file, and I'm delighted. I'm just delighted. I'm delighted for you. I was thinking today, you deserve to get. I don't know if you're eligible for the Pulitzer Prize. Seriously, for investigative journalism, or an international award for this story. And folks, stay tuned. Now, does anyone have any questions? because I posted this. And if anyone has any questions, we have him right now. I don't know how if you can stay for a few more minutes, but it doesn't look like there are any. Anything else, David? I appreciate you coming on. You came on short notice for a little guy like me, a low budget program, and I just couldn't help but shoot a message to you to invite you because this is so timely. Again, I spoke to you about a week ago.
There was no way that I wasn't going to accept the invitation. I mean, since last year, your voice has been actually really important in amplifying this story since last year. Because
thank you.
What sometimes tends to happen in Nigeria is that an important story comes out, and the people in power find ways to sort of convince everyone that it's not important because no one outside Nigeria picked it up. So sometimes having a foreign voice pick it up can act like rocket fuel, and you definitely did that. So you've actually been very useful in sort of making this, helping the story not die. Which is what TINUBU wanted. He wanted the story to just die, and as just crawl into a sewer somewhere.
Right. Right. And thank you so much. I hadn't really been. I wasn't thinking that right now. But I'm delighted, and you seem so fresh and ready to just come on and talk. I guess we'll wrap it up at this point. This was wonderful. Last, I'll leave you with this. Do you have any recommendation for us obedience and how we can sort of just cope with this and not lose our minds? I know that's a tough question, right?
That's very difficult because I myself, I'm struggling because it's what has happened is incredible and not in a good way. However, what I tend to do personally, this probably doesn't work for everyone, but what I tend to do is, as much as it's possible, to filter who I interact with and what information I take in. I do filter, because when you're trying to protect your mental health, almost there's no need to make it difficult for yourself, right? So on social media, for example, on Twitter, other social media, I'm very liberal with my mute and block functions, for example, very liberal with them. It's not necessarily because I have a problem getting along with people. It's just I'm protecting my own mental space, my
So what do? You separate yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's some people might not consider this to be the ideal solution, but I'm very liberal with my mute and block functions.
You're what? You're what?
I'm very liberal, very liberal with my mute and block functions.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, just for your mental health, sure.
Yeah, extremely very much.
I think that's good advice. And just having you talk about, that you have struggles, I think just hearing that is helpful to other people. Listen, we do have a couple of questions. Here's Mediator Olga. My question: if after true expose with TINUBU be disqualified, I guess that that's a little choppy, but can he be disqualified? No.
Only the Supreme Court has the power to do that, and as far as I know, it's unlikely the Supreme Court is going to do that because, first of all, the Chief Justice is an ally of TINUBU himself. So the purpose of this isn't even to appeal to the Supreme Court. Nobody cares about the Supreme Court, right?
Right.
The real judgment was in the appeal court, was at the tribunal. So, and it has never happened in Nigerian history that the Supreme Court will overturn a tribunal. That has simply never happened before. I don't think this is going to happen this time. The Supreme Court Chief Justice is an ally of TINUBU, was allegedly even placed in that position through lobbying from TINUBU himself. So it's very unlikely we're going to get anything out of them. However, as I said earlier, the point of this is to drag the veil off of TINUBU, to remove that myth of invincibility around him. Because for many years...
You're talking about a change in the way people think.
Exactly. Because for many years, he has got away with this idea that, on the streets, everybody knows who I am and what I've done. It's not a secret that he was a drug dealer. He started off in drug dealing. He was very well known in the 80s at street level in Lagos. But for many years, it's been that, yes, I have that street credibility that everybody knows I'm a criminal, but you can't prove it. You can't do anything to me. I'm bulletproof. You can't touch me. For many years, that has been his thing. So having this now will remove that toga of invincibility around him, remove any idea of legacy that he might have, because once he's gone, any idea that maybe his kids and his wife have of prolonging his dynasty, that's going to be dead in the water, because it's going to be clear that you are the progeny and offspring of a drug dealer, right? That's very important. The second thing is, over and above Tinubu himself, it will create a precedent, which I think is a very important precedent in Nigerian public, in the Nigerian public sector in general, that even if the institutions in Nigeria do not do their work, that there is always likely to be some crazy, independent journalist or, citizen journalist somewhere who knows how to get hold of information, knows a thing or two, about international law and legal frameworks and whatnot, and who can thoroughly embarrass you. So just having that threat, it's a deterrent, which I think, will help to keep some of the worst actors out of public service, because they will have that knowledge that there's someone who has the capacity and the willingness to thoroughly disgrace them in public, right? And public shaming is something that, these people really do not like. So I think those are the two reasons why this will be very important. But as far as the Supreme Court goes, I'm not expecting anything from them. I don't think anyone should expect anything from them. And I will also say this, because I said this elsewhere. I think I said this on George Galloway's show yesterday or 2 days ago, that the door is never closed on Nigerians taking back their mandates. So whether or not there's an appeal court or a Supreme Court, or whether it's 2 years after the Supreme Court delivers its verdict, that door never closes. It's always open. At any point, if enough Nigerians decide that they've had enough and they decide that they're going to take direct action, there's nothing that's going to stop them. So I think people should let go of this self-defeating idea that, oh, the Supreme Court is the last chance, our destiny lies in the hands of a judge. No, it doesn't. Our destiny lies in our own hands. At any point, Nigerians can do something about their situation if they so choose. At any point.
I think that's a very important thing for you to remind us of. Again, it goes back to the way people think, their attitude about government, and a change at the grassroots. We had another question, and it was kind of like the other one. It says, it's from Mr. Michael. I have a question for Mr. David. Will this proof be able to evict this man in question with the type of government we run in Nigeria? And the key to that question, it's sort of just a lighter shade of the other question, but with the type of government we run in Nigeria, I think is the key there. But again, doesn't it go back to maybe adjusting our view of this? And the agenda doesn't have to be that he be removed as a result of this and in fact, that's unlikely that any documents will cause the Supreme Court to remove him. And this is more of a long-term process of change in Nigeria, the hope for it.
I agree. And I think it's important for people to understand that my entire purpose for getting this deep into a dogfight with a sitting president wasn't to remove a sitting president. That could be one of the side.
That's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, but that in itself wasn't the goal, right? The goal was, as a journalist, to establish the existence of some sort of public deterrent for bad actors who want to get into public service. Because one recurring thing, which I've noticed since 2015, which was when Buhari became president, the last president Nigeria had, one recurring issue that I noted at the time was that when a bad actor is running for office, for whatever reason, there never seems to be any kind of deterrence. There never seems to be any kind of pushback. There never seems to be any kind of opposition to the basic idea of a bad actor running for office. So it's important to establish this now, that going forward, if anyone is going to run, especially for high office like the president in Nigeria, you need to accept that you are going to face the kind of scrutiny that you may not have been used to before. And that if there's anything in your past that should ordinarily preclude you from becoming president or for running for president, something you're not proud of, then it's better for you to stay in your house and take care of your kids. Because if you come out, there is, no matter how much money you have, no matter how much influence you have over the court system, no matter how much of the media you can buy over, there are going to be people like me who will be out here, who have huge voices of our own, who are also
Amen.
media. We own our own media platform, so we're not dependent on the traditional media for amplification or anything. And we will get the job done. It's very important for that baseline to be established. That's my purpose for getting into all of this. So if in the course of doing this, it so happens that the person who currently illegally occupying that seat gets deposed, that's all well and good. However, that wasn't the goal to start with. And if and it's also very unlikely that will happen because that person
Right.
currently has the system captured. But again, I wish people would see beyond just Tinubu as a person and
About
see
what?
the bigger picture here.
Beyond TINUBU?
Yeah, that there is a bigger picture here. That
Oh yes, are you talking about overall the corruption mentality?
exactly.
Or I'm not sure what you would call it. By the way, I want to tell you right now, thank you so much, because I felt so bad that my first broadcast just stopped working. I was so discouraged, and now it turns out this was the best interview I've ever done.
Well,
It really is. So I feel so much better, and then I have a little surprise for you at the end. But
okay.
That is wild. Anything else?
No, that pretty much will be it from me. I've just I have 1,001 things to do tonight, so
Okay.
I'm about to get into it.
Well, you're very generous with your time, and I'm so appreciative that you're willing to do this, even though I'm a low budget program. And the good thing is, people make copies of it, which is fine by me. They distribute it all over. This is full of factual information, and you have a good sense of humor, don't you?
Well, I try.
You do. You try. Okay. There's you remember the ink blot test?
Right.
In psychology, where they show you an ink blot and they ask what do you see?
Yeah.
Okay, I got one for you.
Okay.
What do you see?
Well, I see someone who hates my guts. Definitely.
Oh, that's a good answer. You mean you think he's aware of you?
Oh yeah, well he definitely is. He definitely is.
Yeah, I don't know if you could say or not, but has there been any communication from him and or maybe people close to him about you about
There have been threats from people, people affiliated with him, but I wouldn't say direct communication, no. But there've definitely been threats.
That's something else.
Yeah.
I have a sort of a twisted sense of humor. There's something awfully bizarre and funny and almost unbelievable when you see him in this is 1970s, people, and I think he's in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
And he's wearing a tux. I rented one like that. And look at his fro, people. And I think, would they say a picture says, what is it, 1,000 words?
Yeah, it tells 1,000 words.
Yeah, or more than that. So thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, and I'll take you up on it again if you let me in the future, because I promised you I wouldn't bother you again until something big happened.
No, well, something big is happening every few days now. So
yeah. Okay. I'll catch you some
all
other
right,
time. Take care.
all right. Cheers.
Bye.